You've hit your borrowing limit, but your SMSF hasn't. If you've already got investment properties in your own name and your bank has told you that you can't borrow anymore, this video is specifically for you. Because right now, your super is sitting in an industry fund. It's compounding at roughly 7% a year on whatever balance you built up. And that sounds fine. 7% is a decent return. Nobody's arguing with that. But watch what happens when you take that same money, say 200 grand in combined super, and instead of leaving it in a fund, you use it as a deposit on $1 million investment. That's also growing at 7%. It's the same return rate, but a very different outcome. And because you're earning 7% on $1 million instead of 200,000, that gap compounds every year. One of the people we helped through this had almost the exact same setup. A couple, they're in their early 40s, 210K in combined super, 2 properties already maxed out under their own names. Their SMSF settled on an 850K property only 8 months later. Now, if that sounds like where you're sitting right now, you'll walk away from this video with 3 things. Number 1, whether an SMSF is a realistic next step for your situation. 2, the actual numbers comparing both scenarios side by side. And 3, qualifying checks that determine if this is worth doing before you even spend $1 on advice. When most people compare SMSF property to leaving their super in an industry fund, they look at the return rate. 7% here, 7% there. Why go through all the hassle just to land on the same number? That comparison is missing the point entirely, because it's not about the percentage. It's actually about what the percentage is compounding on. Let me walk you through both scenarios. Scenario 1, you've got 200K in combined super. You and your partner both earn around 100K each. Employer contributions, they're going in at 12%. Growth rate is 7%. You leave it alone and let it run. After 30 years, that balance lands at roughly 1.48 million. Solid result. Nobody's upset about that at retirement. Scenario 2, same 200 grand, but instead of leaving it in the fund, you use it as a deposit inside your SMSF to purchase a property worth, say, $1 million. That property is also growing at 7% per year. You're paying interest on the loan. SMSF rates run higher than standard residential, but rental income is covering a portion of those repayments. And the growth is compounding on the full value of the property. On the million, not on the 200K. Run that out over the same 30 years and the gap between those two outcomes is roughly 6 million. The return rate was identical, but what changed is the base it compounds on. In the industry fund, 7% grows your 200K. In the SMSF, 7% grows $1 million asset, one you purchase with 200K of your own money and 800K of borrowed money. That's leverage inside a super fund. And most people never run that comparison. Those numbers are compelling, but SMSF property doesn't work for everyone. And the people it doesn't work for tend to find out after they've already paid for the setup. So before you go any further, here are 3 things I check to decide if SMSF investing is the best option for my clients. 1, do you have enough super to begin with? The legal minimum for most lenders sits at about 150K in combined super. But the point where it genuinely makes financial sense is closer to the 200K mark. If you're a couple and you've each got 100K, that gets you there. But both of you need to be on the same page because you'll both be co-directors and guarantors on the trust. If one of you is keen and the other is still thinking about it, that conversation needs to happen before anything else. 2, how much can you actually borrow? This comes down to your loan to value ratio. Some lenders will technically go up to 90% on an SMSF residential purchase, but I wouldn't recommend it. The rates at that level are steep, and SMSF rates sit above what you're used to paying on personal investment loans. The sweet spots I see with my clients is 60 to 70%. In practice, that means if you've got 200K in combined super, you're realistically looking at properties in the 6 to 700K range. To reach $1 million property, you need a bigger balance in the fund. Number 3, are you disciplined with money? This is the one that catches people off guard. When someone comes to me having hit their personal borrowing ceiling, the first thing I looked at is how they got there. If they've built a portfolio steadily over time, made considered decisions, and their credit history is clean, that's a strong signal. If I'm seeing impulsive purchases, reactive decisions, or facilities behind on their credit report, that's a hard stop. Not a let's revisit in 6 months, a hard stop, because this is retirement money. If the discipline wasn't there with personal debt, the SMSF doesn't fix that. Actually, it makes it worse. If you tick all 3, you've got enough super, your borrowing capacity that stacks up, and a clean track record, you're in the zone where it makes genuine financial sense. If you don't, You know now what needs to change. And knowing that before you've spent $1 on accountants and fund setup is worth more than any other calculator. If you made it this far, you probably tick all those 3 boxes. The balance is there, the LVR works, your track record is solid. So now I want to flag the mistake I see go wrong most often. And it doesn't happen to beginners. It actually happens to experienced investors who've already bought 2 or 3 properties in their own name. The mistake is assuming SMSF works the same way as buying personally. You've done this before. You know how to find a deal, run the yield numbers, and talk to a broker. So when the fund gets set up, the instinct is to jump straight onto realestate.com and start looking. Same game, just a different vehicle, right? Wrong. It's a completely different process. And there's a few reasons why. Number 1, you need a specialist accountant. Not the person you see once a year just to lodge your tax return for an hour. An accountant who actually understands SMSF structures, feasibility, and compliance. Number 2, you need a broker who operates in the SMSF lending space. The lender panel is narrow, and the big banks pulled out years ago. You can't actually walk into CBA and ask for an SMSF loan. They don't offer them. Number 3, if you're buying interstate, and a lot of Sydney-based SMSF investors end up doing that because Sydney prices and SMSF balance don't always align, you actually need a buyer's agent who knows that market and a conveyancer who understands SMSF contract requirements for that specific state. All of those people just don't need to exist. They need to understand SMSFs. And they need to be talking to each other. And the timing mistake that costs the most, waiting until the fund is fully set up, the money has rolled over, everything is finalized, and only then talking to a broker. You don't need to wait that long. The moment your accountant has lodged a fund with ASIC and you've got an SMSF name and an ACN, a broker can actually start assessing your borrowing capacity while the rest of the setup runs in the background. People who wait lose months. They didn't need to. The investors who get this right aren't smarter. They just recognized earlier that this is a different process and stopped assuming their personal property playbook would carry straight over. If I stopped the video here, you'd walk away thinking SMSF property is a no-brainer. It's not. This is your retirement savings, and you deserve the honest version of what can go wrong. Not just the version that makes you want to pick up the phone. If a property underperforms, the market drops, or you hit a rental vacancy, you can't just top up the fund from your salary the way you'd cover a shortfall on a personal investment. The mechanisms you're used to, like pulling equity, refinancing, selling quickly, are either restricted or completely unavailable inside an SMSF. So the protection happens on the front end, not the back end. And that means getting proper advice from each specialist before you commit, or running the feasibility before the setup, not after. And you go in understanding that this is a retirement horizon play, not a 5-year flip. The people who get hurt in this space almost bring a short-term mindset to a long-term vehicle. So look, the risk is real, but if you have control of it, if you size your plan correctly before you start, not after you've already committed. If any of this sounds like your situation, you've hit your borrowing ceiling, your super balance is sitting there, and you want to know whether SMSF property actually makes sense for you, please reach out. I work with clients through this process every week, and the first conversation is just about figuring out whether you qualify. No commitments, no setup costs, just the numbers for your situation. Links are in the description.